Thank you. Here we are, we're live.
Thank you. Good afternoon, councillors and staff. Welcome to the extraordinary meeting of the Invercargill City Council of May 2022. Do we have any apologies?
Councillor Kett and Mrs. Coote, sir.
Thank you. Have they been received?
No.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. Put it to the vote. All in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against carried. Declaration of interest. Any changes there? No, if not, item working together legacy report. It's who's taking that?
Mr. Robertson and Mrs. Parker are here to present the report, your worship.
Mr. Robinson?
Thank you. In fact, thanks to Tim. Actually, Jane leads off today, and I'll follow up in this case, which is probably the better order.
Thank you, your worship, councillors. Look, what you've got in front of you is a small covering report with a great big agenda, which contains the final legacy report. This report describes how we took ownership of our own problems, what we did about them, and what were the outcomes and the learnings. It's got 4 audiences, the residents and people of Invercargill, the potential either sitting candidates or new candidates for council next year, the Department of Internal Affairs, and finally the wider local government sector, and they'll all have different sections that they'll be interested in. It can be read as a standalone document, so you can read the whole thing, but also if you read the executive summary, the short version covers everything. It covers a period from about mid-2020 until now, and finally, just in introducing the report, it reflects your own feedback as well as the outcomes of all our various reviews and the local resident survey. I'm going to start at the conclusion in sort of one sentence, because it's a notable sentence, that Invercargill City Council is now in a good position to push ahead on its own without the support of our Working Together programme.
Sorry, what was that?
That's all right, your worship. Here we are.
Just keep going. This is an important finding. It acknowledges the work that everybody's put in to focus on the issues and find a way forward. And it also recognises the importance of the new processes, policies, and the working ethos of council itself. But there is a but. It comes with some words of caution, and that is that the momentum isn't lost. There's an ongoing job for the council to do and to focus on how it operates, build on the good work to date, and present a professional governance face to the community and stakeholders. So I've just picked out a few other things to note before I hand over to Bruce. So just a quick recap of how we got here. We got a letter from DIA in August 2020, which was the catalyst for action. Between August and December 2020, Council spent a great deal of time getting to the bottom of what its problems were and sorting out a way forward. This was resolved in November 2020, and the strategy was called Working Together. It's been deployed over the last 18 months or so. The linchpin of the strategy was the support provided through the appointment of the 2 EAs. The other important components were the development of the council charter, the work that the Deputy Mayor did and the role he played, and a concerted effort by council on communications, and regular reporting, measuring and monitoring, both to the governance group and risk and assurance kept us on track. The key learnings are set out in the report, but I'll just quickly whip through the ones for council itself. What good governance looks like. A well-developed understanding of the interface between governance and management. How a strong relationship between ELT and council itself should function. The importance of the soft skills. The how is as important as the what. The need for a proactive approach to communications in the media, and the importance of developing a good relationship with DIA. And there's a list in there of the learnings from a sector perspective. When we started out, we set out 5 outcomes to aspire to, then added another 2. We think we delivered on 5. The council functioning as a governing body, councillors having an understanding of their role, councillors having capacity and capability and knowledge to make decisions effectively, councillors working effectively with the Chief Executive and ELT, and a lasting legacy, which is what we think we've got in front of us. Some progress has been made in the remaining 2, but there's still work to do. They're around leadership. The mayor, deputy mayor and committee chairs are able to provide leadership to others and the council organisation, and establishing a reputation as a high-performing council. Recent reviews by councillors concluded, among other things, that there's a majority of elected members who have a clear sense of gains made, but with a slowing in momentum. The responses to the resident survey indicate that in the eyes of the community, there's still work to be done to improve the governance of council and to transform it into a high-performing council. However, we can confidently say we have a firm grip of the issues and a solid stake in the ground to build upon. The EA's own feedback notes are reproduced in the report itself. They cover the importance of self-help, commitment to change, but they also acknowledge the value of outside support. That's all I want to say about the legacy report itself. It takes us back to the emphasis in the covering report that the next step is to acknowledge the work achieved under working together and commit to its continued implementation of the programme's objectives over the remainder of the triennium and as an investment in the new council. So finally from me, this is a PGG, a Project Governance Group recommendation that you endorse the legacy report, respond to DIA's letter of August 2020 and ask them for a reply, transfer the residual monitoring functions, that is on outcomes and risks, to risk and assurance, and conclude the EA's work at the end of May. And also that will conclude the PGG's work. And I think with these few words, hopefully not too long, pass over to Bruce.
Thank you. And so Tim, I speak today in my role primarily as the independent advisor, which you'll recall at the stage that we got the DIA letter, I was privileged that you folk appointed me to that role to work with you. So my role really has been to bookend the total process. The first part was, you will recall, to work with you to establish the problem statements that actually were apparent at the time when the DIA wrote to us. And perhaps a more pleasant task was recently interviewing all of you to assess how we had gone about addressing those problem issues. And I want to compliment you all that over the roughly 2 years, you've held that focus. And I want to acknowledge that for a good number of you, that has meant a significant change in behaviour. It has required change. It's gone to the extent that in my assessment, as your advisor, I think we have, what I have said in my notes, pulled back from the brink. You've actually retreated from the precipice and shown that you have developed skills and capacity expected of any group of elected members. So consequently, what I am seeing is that you're working together. You're able to make majority decisions, which by and large you can abide by and support. That, after all, is the challenge of good leadership and governance of a council. I guess Jane, to some extent, has given also the challenge. And the challenge is to obviously maintain that in the lead up to the elections, and to make certain that the investment you have made continues into the new trinium. I think the challenge for us is I think all recognise, and I guess that's tied up with the time to end the Working Together program, that it's time that you collectively can demonstrate to the community that you can do it. And actually, to the extent that I'm independent chair of your Risk and Assurance Committee, we can do it. And also, as I have said in my wrap-up report, there will be issues between now and the 8th of October. There will be issues after the 8th of October. It's up to us, it's our choice, but I want to recognise that we do have the soft skills to do it. So consequently, I'm comfortable with where the conclusions of the legacy report have got to. I'm also comfortable with the report that has come from PGG, and Jane has spoken to, which amongst other things recommends that the Risk and Assurance Committee, the committee I chair for you, picks up particularly monitoring the risks that we still have to cover off and do. And as a final comment, if I could just address personally to Jeff and Lindsay, can I just express my personal gratitude for all the work you guys have done over the 2 years. It fell on to me to have to ring these two guys and say, I've got a job for you. I remember actually where I was when I rang you, Jeff, and I think you were thinking I might want to run 100 miles the other direction. I'm very glad that you didn't. Lindsay, you, and again, I remember where I was driving when I spoke to you on the phone, and you wondered why it needed a person of your calibre. And yet I'm very glad that the two of you have joined the team. You've helped us, and indeed have been such an effective part of the solution. So thank you for your input as well. I know you're keen to finish, Jeff, 31 May, and job well done. Thank you.
Thank you for those very kind words, and I'm sure we appreciated it very much as members of this council. So thank you indeed. I've just got 6 recommendations, and they are: 1, to receive the report Working Together Legacy Report, endorse the final legacy report dated 10th of May 2022, and that's attached to Appendix A. That's where I've been getting into a lot of issues, and I won't go into them, but I just wanted noted in the minutes that
Apologies for lateness, your worship.
oh, that's quite all right. And that I want to endorse the legacy report, but I can't altogether endorse it. The request of the Chief Executive provide DIA with a copy of the legacy report and request a response from them for Council to consider at its meeting of the 24th of May 2022. Acknowledge the positive contribution that the project governance group have made to guiding the work and role, and note that their role is now concluded. Confirm that the residual monitoring functions of the Working Together project will become the responsibility of the Risk and Assurance Committee, which has been done, noting that the 4 residual risks should be included in the Council's risk register, and acknowledge the leadership role that the EAs have played, and that their tenure will end on the 31st of May 2022. And also move. A second for that.
Your Worship. Hello.
That's Nobby, Your Worship.
I have met him before.
Yes.
Yes, Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Your Worship. 2 points before I put forward the motion on the recommendations that you've outlined. As the chair of PUG, I just want to make a brief statement. Just want to reinforce what Bruce has already said, and show some appreciation to Bruce, Jane, Lindsay Mack and Jeff for the input they've had during the project. And it wasn't just the work, but it was their availability to elect members as we do business. And for some of us, it's been a sounding board, in some cases a bit of a mentoring role as well. And so all 4 of these bring experience that we probably didn't have around the table to start with. So I just want to thank you for that. In relation to the motions that you've got in front of you, Sir Tim, it would be my preference to put the motions on a recommendation of recommendation 1 as a sole recommendation, and 2 as a sole recommendation that allows for the opportunity of any member that doesn't agree with the legacy report to say so, and then thirdly to put 3 through 6 as a cluster. So I'm happy to move that way.
It should be all right because we did it lapsed. My motion lapsed for want of a seconder.
No, Your Worship, Councillor Clark intervened. Is Councillor Clark wanting to second your motion?
No.
I don't think he's quite.
Excuse me, but I think both Councillor Amundsen and I rose our hands to be the seconder.
I just need some clarity, Claire and Your Worship. The way I heard the recommendations read out, there was a degree of personal comment from the Mayor on recommendation 2. So I'm not quite sure what he's actually putting on that.
No, Councillor. His Worship made a couple of personal comments, but that was before he moved all of the recommendations, and he walked very quietly through all of the recommendations and moved those recommendations. Councillor Amundsen and Councillor Soper seem to have been in a shoot-off as to who would be the seconder. As Chair, Mr. Chair, Your Worship, who would you like to second the motion?
I think I'd rather have it lapsed and start again.
Are you calling for a mover of the motion? You have moved the motion, and you do have 2 elected members who are prepared to second it.
Oh, okay. That whatever makes it easy. So it's been moved and seconded.
Not yet, Your Worship. We need somebody in the
I'm
minutes.
happy to second the motions,
Thank
1
you.
through 6, but I'm also happy to take them individually, or as Councillor Clark described.
Okay.
So the motion, it is now a motion that is on the floor, and you may like to see if there are any questions, comments, debate of the motion.
Thank you. Elizabeth, moving at first item was to receive the report. So I guess we do it that way. Although usually councillors prefer to break down and
Can I seek some clarification, please?
That's Councillor Abbott.
Councillor Abbott.
Yeah, I just want to seek some clarification. Are we going to be addressing them separately as a motion, or are you moving the entire recommendations in their entirety? That's what I want to know after listening to Councillor Clark and now listening to Councillor Armiston, who says she's happy to take them 1 and 2 separately. That's a bit confusing.
Well, it's it's been moved and seconded.
Your Worship, you were about to put the motion that the report be received.
All right.
That's been moved and seconded, and if you deal with that one alone, that will allow you to open it for debate.
Thank you, Claire.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded then.
Yes.
To remove it and
Yes, Your Worship, you moved it and Councillor Amundsen has seconded it.
that is that
The
to
report.
receive the report.
Correct.
Thank you. All right, we'll do them one at a time.
It's just that first motion at the moment.
So the first motion is to receive the report of Working Together Legacy Report. It's moved and seconded. Open it up for discussion, clarification.
You could put that motion if you like.
Okay. Put the motion to the vote. All in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against? No. I'll have my vote against recorded.
You don't wish to receive the report, Your Worship?
No, I want to receive it as item 1. I'm taking them as separate items.
So this is item 1 and you're voting against receiving the report?
No.
That's...
Your Worship, let me intervene here so that we're not creating a bit of a circus situation here. The Chief Executive has recommended that you table the report, and we're voting on that. That means that you don't have to agree to the report, we're just tabling it. And then we have some ongoing discussions as we work through recommendations 2 through 6. I put the suggestion that we do 2 separately to give you the chance to vote against it if you don't agree with the report. But in doing so, you still could agree to the subsequent recommendations around where to from here. And so I think that's the way forward.
That sounds exactly what I was trying to achieve.
Do you want to move to recommendation 2?
So I'll move recommendation 2. Endorse the final legacy report dated 10th of May 2022. Attached to Appendix A.
Seconded, Your Worship.
Moved and seconded. Discussion, questions, put it to the vote.
I see Councillor Clark's got his hand up.
Oh, yeah, sorry, that was my mistake. That was the last one.
Okay. Put it to the vote.
No, Councillor Annenson's got a hand up.
Thanks. I just wanted to speak to this because I think it's really important to acknowledge the process that we've all been through here. I think that this report and all of the appendixes provide some real clarity for what's been happening this term and how we have all worked to manage those things. And I also think that councillors have all benefited from the opportunity we've had to learn from people like Lindsay McKenzie and Jeff Grant, but equally Jane and Bruce as well. And I think that it's important to acknowledge that work, but I think that the one thing that hasn't been acknowledged potentially is actually all the extra work that has been essentially dumped on the staff at the Invercargill City Council as a result of this process. And I know that it hasn't necessarily been a great time for them in some respects, but they have all worked really hard as well and have been great support to all of us as we've gone through this process. And I think that that's really important to acknowledge.
Thank you. Any further? Yes. Councillor Ludlow.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just want to pick up on a point that was made by Councillor Amundsen, and that is around the staff. When the Working Together program started, it was an uncomfortable situation for us all to find ourselves in, but collectively we had to move forward. One of the issues of concern that was expressed by the Department of Internal Affairs was around our ability to successfully pull together a long-term plan, and we did. And at a time where councillors were normally busy with that LTP process, we were working additionally on top of our own business and the working together, and in a spotlight, and in a spotlight that came down to what was happening at a governance level, but it could not have not had an impact on staff and morale. So for the fact that they were able to pull together an ambitious, at our direction, long-term plan, and put together some really long hours during a time of our first ever lockdown. You know, it was a real challenge. So I don't think we can emphasise enough how grateful we are to them, not only for their mahi, but their perseverance. Thank you, sir.
Further discussion? Councillor Soper.
Thank you, Your Worship. I also want to acknowledge the process that has taken a great deal of work and has reached the legacy report, the very good legacy report we have here today. And I want to start by saying the following. Ko te pai tawhiti, whaia kia tata, ko te pai tata, whakamau kia tina. Seek out distant horizons and value those you attain. At the start of this process where we took ownership of our own problems as a council, we appeared to have some very distant horizons, and there was some doubt about how long it would take us to attain any of those, and whether we would be in a position to feel that we had reached the maturity where we would have a legacy report in place and a belief around the table that we could move on and build on the attainments we had made. I believe we are very much at that point. I believe that we do have to pay a great deal of tribute to the council staff who have assisted us through that process, and my colleagues have talked about that quite clearly. I also want to thank personally the two excellent external advisors we have had. You have contributed greatly to what has happened in the last 18 months. We all know a great deal of the work, both in the background and the foreground, that you have put into achieving that. we're sorry to see you go, but we're also quite proud that we have reached a maturity point, which means that we can say thank you and goodbye, although you are certainly welcome back. And I also just want to pay a little bit of tribute to the learnings that have formed a good part of this report, because I think what we have achieved as a council are learnings that are for ourselves, for future councils, and also to be taken note of by the wider local government sector. And yeah, I just didn't want the vote to happen without the acknowledgement that we have reached a maturity point, that there were some distant horizons that looked very, very far away when we started this process. And I think we can, as the legacy report acknowledges, feel that there are attainments and a platform that we have to build on for the future, for this council and future councils. Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion, questions? I'm moving along then to the request.
Sorry, Your Worship, are you going to put that motion?
What's it again?
Number 2, endorse.
Sorry, I thought we'd put that one to rest. Move item 2.
It's been moved and seconded. If you
Moved and seconded. Put it to the vote. All in favour say aye.
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 It's carried. And have my note.
Just a point of order, Your Worship. Are you saying no to this and you moved it? Is that at all possible?
No, it's not.
How does that work? Is that a double positive, negative?
Double
or?
negative.
Check standing orders, there's nothing preventing.
No, you can do that. Yeah.
Standing orders allowed.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I would say that it is perfectly lawful, acceptable
no, that's
for a
fine. I
member to
was
move
just-
something and vote against it. It is
That's
typical for the member to say that they are pro forma moving it, but not necessary,
so it's like ordering a pizza, having it delivered and throwing it in the red bin. Yeah.
as long as you have paid for it.
You pay for it.
And
Got it.
please,
Please don't use
Makes
that
sense.
analogy. Wasted pizzas.
Well, that seems a nice sort of conclusion.
he's shouting pizza tonight.
Oh, thank you.
So I put it to the vote. Item 3. Request that the Chief Executive.
So, Tim, it was suggested that 3 to 6 could be taken collectively.
That 3,
4, 5 and 6.
5 and 6 be.
But they can all be taken together. They can be taken as a block.
So items 3, do I have to read them out?
No, you don't.
4, 5 and 6 be moved.
I'll
Been
move.
moved. They've been moved, Your Worship. You moved them.
I moved them.
And I'll second that, Your Worship.
They
6 will be put to the vote together.
Yes, you'd like to put that now? There's no discussion.
Move that now. I've moved it, haven't I? So
Yeah,
now
it's been moved and seconded.
You seconded.
Councillor Amundsen?
Okay. Put it to the vote. All in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Now we move on to. Where do we move to now?
That is the end of the agenda.
Oh,
Councillor Clark has his hand up, sir.
Councillor Clark.
Councillor Clark.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Just a point of clarification from a previous PGG meeting, which I chair. At the last PGG meeting, you made a statement in public to the effect that you felt uneasy because council was suing you. I just want to seek some clarification on that because I've had some feedback from the community about that. It's my understanding that the legal case that we have between council and yourself is actually the other way around, that you are seeking to recover costs from us, we're not suing you. So I'd just like to clarify that. because that statement was made in 2 successive meetings on the day.
Well, I'd rather not go there.
Okay. Just for the record, then, Your Worship, then I'll just clarify it from my point of view. In both those meetings that I attended, one of which I chaired, it's my understanding that council is not suing you, that in fact you are suing council. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I'll declare the meeting closed. Thank you very much, and thank you again to our helpers. It's certainly been a trial by fire, and it's hard to put it out. It's like the wetlands, really. And it's, I think it shows your resilience, the word they use for people in your predicament and in mine. And we appreciate the fact that you've all hung in there to the bitter end, and it's appreciated as well. Thank you again.